It's fantastic to have you join me here on Gist Nigeria from the BBC and Channels Television. And of course, on the program, we look at the stories making the rounds online. I am Wali Fakile. Let's start with our top story. Like many countries around the world, Nigeria is in debt and the debt seems to be rising. The Debt Management Office says, as at the last quarter of 2021, Nigeria's debt had risen to 38 trillion naira and raises the alarm that if the country does not grow its current low revenue profile, it may risk debt sustainability issues. But what exactly does this mean? Could Nigeria have done without borrowing so much? And what does the current debt profile mean for the country's development? In this report, Gist Nigeria's Aneta Felix gets some answers from experts and policymakers.
As at September 30th, 2021, Nigeria's external debt totaled 15 trillion naira. Domestic debt totaled 22 trillion naira, bringing her total public debt to 38 trillion naira. Here's how Nigerians are reacting to that information.
He choked me. He don't choke me like this. As I had the shake.
This is shocking. So how will our generation, the children we are having now, we putting them in debt?
Why are they borrowing the money? It's not as if they are fixing anything in this country.
And I see how that he's still going to borrow more.
As many Nigerians continue to express shock and disbelief at the country's staggering debt profile, economic analysts provide more insights.
Globally, debt is what runs the world, really. So as much as it might sound a lot in terms of the actual numbers, it's not out of place.
When government borrows, it is for a purpose, that's one. Again, debt is cumulative. So 38 trillion naira didn't happen in one day.
This year, the figures are set to get even higher. Nigeria's budget deficit is 6.26 trillion naira. This will be financed by borrowing 2.57 trillion naira from domestic sources, 2.57 trillion naira from foreign sources, 1.16 trillion naira from multilateral and bilateral loan drawdowns, as well as 90.7 billion naira in privatization proceeds.
If we have the assets, and we do, and we know we can borrow against these assets, I don't see any reason not to.
Debt servicing is another thorn in the government's flesh. According to the 2022 budget, the federal government plans to spend 22% of total expenditure and 35.6% of its 10 trillion naira projected revenue on loan repayments. That's a total of 3.8 trillion naira.
I doubt if that will be sufficient. One, we will not generate up to 10 trillion. So which means the cost of service will definitely increase. And we might even need to borrow more and have new service. But one thing I'm certain, we will not do less than 50% of all revenue to service them.
The argument of government is that we need to do that to reflate the economy, hoping that at some point in time in the future, revenues will rise year on year to catch up with the big gap we now have between revenues and expenditures and debt services. So that argument has not been proved to be sustainable.
But why does the government borrow so much?
We are still credit worthy in the sense that we have essential resources to pay those debts. We have oil resources that are guaranteed to keep producing, and our creditors are comfortable that as a last resort, they will have access to our oil.
Last year, Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed assured Nigerians that the debt stock was nothing to worry about, citing the country's debt to GDP ratio.
What we have borrowed relative to our GDP is low compared to other countries. The real issue is that we have not been generating enough revenues and also generating them from a diversity of sources.
The World Bank confirms that Nigeria's debt remains sustainable, but not without some cost to the economy.
the restrictions that can come from a risk or a heightened case of default. Those are the things that can come up, and it affects everyone, because if IMF comes in and starts giving restrictions on and saying they must devalue to whatever the currency should be, or they must take out subsidy and actually have us do those things, everybody will be negatively impacted.
The finance minister also says government borrowings are for a justified reason, to fund critical infrastructure. But how much of these projects do Nigerians enjoy?
A lot of what it's used for, even in terms of infrastructure, does not generate revenues that pay back the debt.
Government is borrowing for a purpose. Can we see the things the government is doing with them? Are we benefiting? Yes, we are.
We see what they're spending money on. I mean, all sorts of infrastructures all over the place. The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is an example. The Niger Bridge, which was, history before, is now a reality.
In the long term, experts posit that these debts portend certain dangers for Nigeria's economy.
It means that we have a future that is already sold to creditors. That's what it means when you keep borrowing at this rate.
On Tuesday, January 25th, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva, backtracked an earlier announcement to remove fuel subsidy by July 2022, a program estimated to cost the government $7 billion a year. Silva says government plans to continue making subsidy payments for the next 18 months.
We will apply for some amendment of the law so that we will still be within the law. We are proposing an 18-month extension, but what the National Assembly is going to approve will be up to them.
The Petroleum Minister's announcement, though a seeming relief to millions of Nigerians, inherently means the country's debt stock might rise higher. However, economist Gabriel Idahosa argues that Nigeria can survive without loans. The formula: public-private partnership.
Converting our assets as a partnership with other people who have the technology and the resources, and creating very steady, sustainable revenues for the government and people of Nigeria.
That means...
Other analysts prefer different solutions.
It means we have to have some sort of debt moratorium, and it means we have to have a plan to increase the revenues of the government and to reduce waste and expenditure on recurrent items in the budget.
So we have a power problem. Let's find people who would pay for a license and develop that sector. Let there be competition. Give them the best ease of doing business, right? And let's attract people.
Despite the possibility to thrive without loans, President Muhammadu Buhari says that Nigeria will remain open to progressive partnerships.
The Chinese are welcome. Anybody that is prepared to come and help us our infrastructure, as told you, the roads, the rail and power will be welcome.
According to the National Development Plan recently unveiled by the Finance Minister, the federal government plans to borrow in excess of 50 trillion naira by 2024, a debt the World Bank describes as vulnerable and costly. Annetta, Felix, Gist, Nigeria.
Well, hopefully Nigeria generates enough revenue to service its rising debt. So should Nigeria continue to borrow to finance its expenses? Do join the conversation on Twitter at Gist Nigeria TV. Would like to hear from you. Moving on to our next